We are talking Tony Pollard and his brand new Dynasty value on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, it's almost Thanksgiving. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Getting over a cold here and all those types of things seems to be sweeping the nation. And
you're not alone.
Yeah. And Thanksgiving's here already, and week 12 is here already. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah, we say it every week. It's flying by. I've got one league that this is actually because of an extended playoff deal. This is actually the last week of the regular season in some of my main dynasty leagues. If you play in the Scott Fish Bowl, this is actually the first week of the playoffs. So same deal there. Obviously a bigger than normal playoff setup there. So yeah, we're getting down to it, Matt. I can't believe it. But we are certainly thankful for everyone tuning in on this busy week. It's Wednesday. We're talking player value, and today we're doing a Dynasty Value Study. This one is probably a couple weeks overdue now that I really think about it, Matt. We're talking Tony Pollard today. Of course, the running back for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if I should call him the backup running back, the starting running back. It's not really necessarily clear right now, and I don't know if it really matters to Tony Pollard. He's just putting up fantasy points regardless of what his status is.
Yeah, I mean, he's a spectacular football player right now, and it's taken the Cowboys a little while to realize that he deserves all this playing time. I mean, do we know that he's going to get what he deserves? I don't think they can deny it anymore, which isn't even really a knock on Zeke. He's still a useful player. But one thing Pollard's really done to help his cause is he's gotten a lot better in pass protection. So Zeke's been well known through his whole career, and even Ohio State, being very reliable in the passing game, picking up blitzes and blocks. And now Pollard's in that neighborhood too. So there's not really even an excuse to not have him out there a lot.
And of course, Pollard has been the backup to Ezekiel Elliott for the past 3 seasons. And has been useful throughout that time. I mean, Zeke's been one of the most reliable players in the league as far as his health. Coming into this year, I think Zeke had only missed one game where Pollard got to serve as the starter. So 2019, Pollard is the RB 53. 2020, he's the RB 41. We start seeing that weekly usage increase a little bit, not quite to a committee setup, but certainly they made more use of him. 2021, he's the RB 27. He does get that start and has a huge game when Zeke was out. And now through essentially 3.5 years, we now see 3 games where Pollard has been the starter and Zeke has been out of the lineup. And in those games, Pollard has averaged 105 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, plus an additional 35 receiving yards. And he's averaging 29 fantasy points per game in those 3 games. Obviously a small sample size there, but the short version is
test,
the short version is when he gets a chance, he's making the most of it. And honestly, doing some things that Zeke has never done, including rushing for 3 touchdowns in a game. Pollard has done that. Zeke never has in his NFL career.
Yeah, and I mean, I know this sounds extreme, and I'm not saying, Mike Lombardi, everyone knows who Michael Lombardi is, I assume. He's writing this book about not only the Hall of Famers, but like who are the best Hall of Famers. And I was listening to his podcast this morning, and he said, Pollard reminds me of Gale Sayers. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
I'm like, whoa. And he didn't say that he's going to go into the Hall of Fame, but just the way he accelerates around the corner is rare. And you give him a little crack, and it's like, whoa. I mean, look what that guy can do. And he's a really good receiver, too.
Yeah, my real hesitation on Pollard, and I've said it on here before. I think I probably just said it even a couple weeks ago, actually, is he's been a backup running back for 3+ years now. And I mean, we're really seeing how good he is, but he's 25 and a half years old, right? So if Dallas moves on, from Zeke, and we'll talk about some contract stuff soon, because I think that's an important piece of this Pollard puzzle. But regardless, if Tony Pollard somehow gets his shot at being the starter in Dallas or anywhere else next season, he's going to do it as a 26-year-old running back. And he could be really productive. I just don't know value-wise how much meat is left on the bone there.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't had a ton of wear and tear on his body. I mean, even going back to college, which is great. But what if he loses a little Gale Sayers acceleration, and he's not the biggest guy? I don't think he's a true workhorse, no matter where he ends up, or if Zeke's gone, or if it's Dallas or somewhere else. But we've seen guys like McCaffrey, and I'm throwing out names like McCaffrey and Sayers, but I mean, I don't mean to be that extreme. Get by without just having a really strong role in both a running and receive. He gets high value touches.
Right. And you mentioned an important point there as far as not having a lot of wear and tear. I mean, being a backup and getting limited playing time to this point in his career. I mean, he doesn't have that workload that Zeke does, that any other starting running back does. And there's kind of a growing thought out there that with running backs specifically, when we're talking dynasty value and when is the time to get out, that touches are much more important than that age. And I mean, we kind of have seen that the past couple of years with a guy like Cordarrelle Patterson, who even at 29, 30, 31 has been really productive because he didn't have 10 years or 8 years of running back workload like many of these others, including Elliott. So, I mean, that's kind of an argument both ways for Pollard's near, short-term future, I guess. But it's going to be exciting to see what's next for him. We're going to talk about what's next, both in the rest of this season and beyond, right after this.
Everyone, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. And if you listen to some of my other podcasts, I've made it pretty clear these last couple of days haven't been easy. I've been fighting a crazy cold. It's an odd one. It's all over my body. And I'm trying to juggle all these different radio hits. And I could use someone to talk to and help me through it a little bit. And unfortunately, life just doesn't come with a user manual that helps that. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck or frustrated. And therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online. Again, I would love to have someone to talk through and just kind of, is this normal? Is it the juggling act that I'm going through? Is that okay? Again, everyone deserves to feel their best, and BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists. All the benefits of in-person therapy, plus it's more convenient, more accessible, and more affordable. Just fill out a very brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It's very, very simple. No waiting rooms, no traffic. You have to pay for gas. I mean, no endless searching for the right therapist. So get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. And that's betterhelp.com/lockedon.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Matt, we talked a little bit about the production of Tony Pollard so far this season, and really the first 6-7 weeks of the season don't matter much in telling the story of this player. He was the RB3 back in week 2, had a couple of RB2 level games thrown in. He was the RB21 in week 5, RB23 in week 7, but things really started to change for Pollard when Zeke Elliott got hurt. Week 8, Tony Pollard was the starter. He was the RB4 in that week. The Cowboys had a bye the following week. It was expected that Zeke would return in week 10. He did not. And Pollard again had the backfield to himself. He was the RB8 that week. So we're talking about a couple of top 8 performances. And then just last week, Zeke is back on the field. And I mean, we've all heard the name or heard the talk about Jerry Jones and how he feels about Elliott and how, what's the word here, Matt? How stubborn, I guess he potentially is being
attached.
That's
gonna be nice. Yeah,
that's a nicer way to say
it.
And essentially we saw a split backfield. Elliott had a nice game as well. He had a couple of rushing touchdowns. And Pollard did much of his damage. While he saw plenty of carries, he did much of his damage as a receiver, and he ends up being the RB1 for the week. So we're looking at 3 straight weeks here, RB4, RB8, and RB1 for Tony Pollard. He's now up to the RB10 on the season in PPR leagues, and that's total points. So despite just a couple games being the starter and having that backfield to himself, he has outscored every back in the league outside of 9 guys ahead of him. So super impressive for Tony Pollard. Obviously, how do you see this playing out and just the rest of this season with Elliott and Pollard potentially sharing that backfield?
Well, I think the key is he has 2 really, really good things going for him, is the receiving skills and massive big play ability, because you can break the long one, and he often does, and he catches a fair amount of passes no matter what. The only high leverage situation where I doubt he's going to get are the goal line touches. And, Zeke has cachet and probably has earned those, but I bet he out touches Elliott going forward.
Yeah, I would think so as well.
Yeah. And a good offense.
Yeah, the Cowboys do play, obviously, on Thanksgiving tomorrow, as they always do. And there's some questions about Zeke's status going into that game, that he didn't come out of week 11 fully healthy. So we may once again see the Tony Pollard show this week, which would be a huge stage on Thanksgiving Day. I mentioned the contract earlier. I mean, I think we probably all know the Zeke contract. It is pretty ugly at this point. He is under contract for 4 more years at a lofty salary. There isn't a potential out for the Cowboys. The dead cap number would be pretty ugly for them, but I almost think they may have to go that route again. We talked about the Jerry Jones connection, but I mean, Zeke has shown his age. He's shown his wear and tear this year, not only with being banged up, but even when he's been on the field, has not been nearly as effective as past seasons. But the more interesting one here is Tony Pollard, because he's an unrestricted free agent following this season. I guess first question I want to ask you is, do you think there's a chance that Dallas could franchise tag Tony Pollard and dump Zeke?
Yes. Again, I don't know the numbers well enough, but I think that's the best thing for the football team.
Yeah, that feels like the right play. I mean, valuing Tony Pollard as a top 5 running back. That's I believe, if I understand the the franchise
Yeah.
tags, that's essentially what he would get, average of the top 5 running backs.
Draft one in the 4th round.
Right. At first thought, it seems like that's too much to pay for Tony Pollard, but we've seen him perform as a top 5 running back in recent weeks. So maybe that's not a stretch. Again,
this is a contending team. They may win the Super Bowl this year.
We talked about Pollard's age, not a player that is necessarily going to go out and get a 4 or 5 year contract. So maybe maybe that 1 year deal, whether it comes via franchise tag or otherwise, makes a little more sense. Again, both for the team and for the player here. So that's going to be a really interesting one to watch. We will see if Dallas lets Pollard go as a free agent this offseason, or if they put that tag on him and keep him around. Matt, when we come back, we will talk about Tony Pollard's trade value, and we'll share our Twitter polls as well.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. I have an odd job, as you guys know, but I have a lot of people I know that have used LinkedIn, and it's worked out phenomenally well. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. You always want the right team member to help you finish strong and achieve your goals, and it works out really well on both ends that way. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in developing quality hires versus leading competitors. So LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
Matt, one of the best ways to identify a player's current value is to look at some trades that are happening with that player. We did that just yesterday with some injured players, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams. Let's do the same thing now with Tony Pollard. Prices are kind of all over the place. This one is going to vary greatly from league to league. Tony Pollard and Zay Jones, really just Tony Pollard here. We're talking throw-ins. Tony Pollard for Cooper Kupp is essentially what we're dealing with. Cooper Kupp all but done for the year. I think I want Cooper Kupp there, but if I'm contending and I think I can win a title, I don't know. I probably still am aiming higher than Tony Pollard, even if I want that short-term piece.
Kupp's a lot to give up, and the Rams' future is really uncertain, but he won the Triple Crown last year. It's Cooper Kupp. I think I'm taking him.
Yeah, I am as well. Tony Pollard and Jaylen Warren. He's not quite a throw-in, but Pollard's certainly the main piece there. You're getting Devontae Smith, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who might be a throw-in.
I might want Warren over Helaire.
Yeah, that's fair. So really, we're talking Pollard for Devontae Smith here. I'll take Pollard there.
Yes, I think Pollard's the choice there. Smith's a fine player, but Pollard brings more now, that's for sure.
Pollard for George Kittle and a couple of late picks.
Probably Pollard.
Yeah.
Kittle looked good the other night and made me almost remember what he can bring, but how much longer? That's a tie.
Pollard and a second rounder for Chris Godwin. I'm taking Pollard there for sure. I'm sorry. I'm taking Pollard there along with that pick pretty easily.
Yes.
And Pollard for Tyler Lockett. That trade was made prior to this past week's game. So they missed out on that RB1 overall game and probably sold a little bit low. I'm taking Tony Pollard there.
Yeah, I think you need to throw in a second with Lockett.
Let's finish up the show here, Matt, and let's look at these Twitter rankings. These are of course, rankings that we create through the use of head-to-head player polls. These are polls done on Twitter. Tony Pollard versus a lot of other running backs that were in that same range. And I did it. I always try to get the player that we're focused on right in the middle of
Yeah, you nailed it.
the player pool, and I was able to do that here. About half these guys were chosen ahead of Pollard, and he was chosen ahead of about half of them as well. But there's some interesting results here when you compile it all together and look at this as a set of rankings. Nick Chubb, the number one guy in this set of rankings, 78%. So he was the easy vote ahead of Tony Pollard. I get that part. I was slightly surprised that the gap was so large, but Chubb,
yeah, a little bit.
Chubb tops this list with 78%. And this is maybe what's really interesting here, Matt. A 2023 mid first round rookie pick. Now, again, I'm not surprised at all that a first round rookie pick, especially in this 2023 class that we're excited about, I'm not surprised that that was chosen ahead of Pollard. 69% is the number for that one. But I guess I'm surprised that the pick had such a gap compared to some of the other running backs we're going to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you prefer the first rounder to all of those other names you see on the list that I'm about to mention?
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
some of it's just a door number 2 thing, and hope for shiny things, but a lot of it's youth too. I mean, some of these names are getting up there.
So when we're talking about flipping a first round pick for a running back, we're going to prefer Jonathan Taylor and Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, I would assume, maybe.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to take an Etienne over Chubb.
Okay. Yeah, Etienne was not part of this poll. Austin Eckler was also not part of this poll. I think those guys would all be preferred over a first rounder, but yeah, maybe.
And this is a mid. This isn't, Robinson.
Yeah, this is right. This is not Bijan Robinson. All right, let's continue with the names here. Javonte Williams is next on the list. He got 66% of the votes, so easily chosen ahead of Pollard and several others. Joe Mixon, 60%. DeAndre Swift, 58%. And a couple of running backs tie with 53%. These guys are in very different parts of their careers. Dalvin Cook at 53, Ramondre Stevenson at 53% as well. And the last player chosen ahead of Tony Pollard, it was a close one. Derrick Henry gets 52% of the vote. Matt, any surprises from from that group of running backs chosen ahead of Tony Pollard?
No, but I think the noteworthy one is Stevenson. It might be time to buy him if he's in this neighborhood, because I think he's really establishing himself as a clear number 1, and he catches the ball a lot. Like, I would clearly have him over Pollard, and might take him, the more I think about it, over a Mixon or some of these other guys. We haven't talked much about him.
That's what I was going to say. If you could, Mixon got a higher percentage of the vote, as did, I guess Dalvin Cook was tied. Mm-hmm. If you could flip one of those more established kind of name type running backs for Stevenson, it sounds like you would do that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that his stock is rising very fast and is going to stay high.
All right. We got Tony Pollard here in the middle, and these are the running backs he was chosen ahead of. Josh Jacobs got 46% of the vote, so Pollard was favored over Jacobs. Alvin Kamara, 45%. Dameon Pierce, 44%. Your guy, Najee Harris, 42%. And then we see a pretty big drop-off down to Aaron Jones at 30%. And had to be a little sentimental here
I like that.
And include Zeke Elliott. He gets just 3% of the vote. And honestly, I'm wondering who those 3% are.
I wish they were in my league.
Yeah, that prefers Zeke to Tony Pollard at this point. But had to include him on there as a teammate too, the guy we're focused on today. So again, that was Jacobs, Kamara, Dameon Pierce, Harris, Aaron Jones, plus Zeke. Any surprises there?
Not really. I mean, he's basically the same age as Jacobs. Jacobs is probably having the better year. Well, he is from start to finish.
Right.
I mean, I'm down on Najee too, but the last couple of weeks have been interesting to me.
Better, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. He looks a lot better. His usage is better. Najee and Pierce versus Pollard is interesting to me because, I mean, Pierce especially has age on his side. I keep going back to Pollard being 26.
Yeah. Well, not quite 26.
Well, about to,
yeah. He's got a few months, but we're looking at this group: Jacobs, Kamara, Pierce, and Harris, and they all got in the 42 to 46 range percentage of vote. So we're looking at that as essentially a tier. And then really the only players that are totally out of this range are Aaron Jones along with Zeke. I mean, that feels like the right tier for where Pollard is right now.
I mean, a month ago, this would all be laughable.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it will be any more though. I think, even if Zeke stays healthy, I think Pollard is here to stay as a fantasy starter. And as we talked about earlier, I can't wait until this offseason to see how this plays out. It's always drama with Dallas right now. They're in the OBJ drama. They're publicly courting him, and they may be publicly courting and trying to keep Tony Pollard around here in just a few months as he enters free agency.
No, it's going to be interesting for sure.
That will do it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the Locked On Dynasty channel on YouTube. Remember to follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL, and I'm Ryan MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.